everyone. Welcome back to my channel, Opinions on Stories. In today's video, I'm sharing my thoughts on KeKe Palmer's recent comments about living below her means. Let's get into it. KeKe recently sat down with CNBC and opened up about how she handles her finances. She said, "I live under my means. I think it's incredibly important. If I have $1 million in my pocket, my rent is going to be $1,500. That's how underneath my means I'm talking. My car note is going to be $340. I don't need a Bentley. I'll ride in a Lexus." I learned from my parents very early on because they knew their limitations with money and finances. I believe in saving and frugality. I don't play around with that. Now, some people applauded her for this and said she's being smart, that if they had her kind of money, they'd live that way too. But others felt her comments were disingenuous. They accused her of trying too hard to be relatable, especially since she's owned several multi-million-dollar properties and currently lives in a $5 million home. Personally, I can see both sides. Yes, it's true. She's lived in multiple million-dollar homes, and her current one is reportedly worth $5 million. But even then, that could still be well below her actual means. We don't know exactly how much she makes, but she could still be telling the truth about living below her means relative to her income. On the flip side, using examples like $1,500 rent and $340 car note can come off a little out of touch when you've clearly lived in expensive homes. I get why some people feel that kind of messaging is more about trying to appear down to earth than it is about being transparent. What really stood out to me, though, is how differently people react to frugality depending on who's being frugal. When rich celebrities talk about saving money or living simply, people call them geniuses. That's how the rich stay rich, they say. But when regular people try to do the same things, buying off-brand clothes, shopping at discount or thrift stores, living in modest homes, driving inexpensive cars, they get clowned for it. People call them broke, cheap, or even bums. Why is being frugal smart when you're rich, but embarrassing when you're not? Why do we praise celebrities for doing things that people who are actually struggling get mocked for? This story actually reminded me of another one I came across a while ago. Former NFL player Chad Johnson once admitted that he lived inside the Cincinnati Bengals stadium for about 2 years. He said the stadium had everything he needed at the time, so he didn't see the point of spending money on a house. And while some people applauded him for that and said, "That's how the rich stay rich," again, I couldn't help but think, there are poor and homeless people out here who could desperately use a roof over their heads, but they'd never be allowed to stay in a stadium, even for one night, let alone 2 years. The owner would have had security escort them out immediately. But a millionaire? He gets to do it and gets praised for it? Meanwhile, a lot of everyday people can't even stay with their own family members temporarily to save on rent without being judged and degraded, sometimes by their own relatives, never mind society as a whole. So the idea of someone poor being able to live rent-free in a stadium is laughable, even if it would benefit them far more than it benefited Ocho Cinco. I'm not criticizing KeKe or Ocho Cinco for their choices. I'm pointing out how society treats rich people doing frugal things very differently from how it treats poor people doing the exact same things, often out of necessity. That double standard is wild. We applaud the wealthy for being smart when they choose to be extremely cheap, even when they don't have to be. But we shame people with very limited resources for being careful with every dollar because they have no other choice. That's a mentality I'll never understand, and honestly, I refuse to accept it as okay. Stories like these just reinforce how deeply society worships money. People will applaud almost anything a rich person does, while throwing hate at anyone who doesn't have as much. And whether people admit it or not, a lot of them need to take a hard look at themselves and reflect on why they think that way. They know who they are. At the end of the day, living frugally should be respected, no matter your income level. Rich people shouldn't be the only ones who get praised for it. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story or my opinion, so drop a comment down below. I'll leave a link to the original story in the description. If you enjoyed this video, Don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks so much for watching.